and recording on this computer. Hello guys, and welcome to the first of the hot seats. So what these are is once every 4 weeks or so, I'm going to invite one of you guys who are currently in the program that are seeing good results, you've implemented well, or we just kind of want to get you on here and talk about kind of like your experience in terms of the program. I've seen a few of my friends do these and their clients find them very, very motivating because they can see how other people on the program are kind of getting on. You can put a bit of a face to a name when you see people like posting within the group, etc. So I just thought it was another way to bring the community together a little bit more. So for those of you that don't know, this is Roger. Roger has been in my program for about 18 to 20 weeks now, and has been seeing really, really good results so far. Roger followed my content for a long time before coming onto the program, applied things on his own, just from kind of like speaking to me in the DMs, etc. Saw some really, really good results, and then fell off the wagon a little bit. We'll put it nicely, and then kind of reached out when he decided, enough was enough. Like I need to finally get on with this. So, yeah, Roger, if you kind of like want to introduce yourself. I'm just going to go and close the kitchen door, and yeah, tell everybody kind of like about yourself and like what you do and how we met.
So I'm Roger. I'm a computer engineer by day. So I sit down. I spend most of my time in front of a screen of one sort or another. So I don't really have an active lifestyle and haven't had for a long time. And as Donald says, I've started following him January last year and implemented a lot of the things he was suggesting. And I was messaging him and asking him for free little tips. And I lost a large amount of weight. And as soon as I tried to maintain that weight, what I hit was what I normally call cake season. And all the parties and things start to come along and you just overindulge. And my weight was going back up. So what I did was I reached out to Donald and said, let me join and pay for it. And that way I will be accountable and it'll cost me something, so I'll get back on track. And that's what I did. And the results have been better in the last 18 months than I've had in the last 10 years of trying on my own.
So why don't we delve into that a little bit more? So like, what was life like before kind of like trying this stuff, as you said, that you were doing for free? Like, what sort of programs had you tried in the past? Like, how were you feeling about kind of what was going on, and like what were the results that you were getting?
So with most things, you go on a diet and you go on these mainstream diets, Slimming World, Weight Watchers. You calorie count on your own, but you don't know what you're actually doing. So what you do is you lose a shed load of weight, usually between January and July, and then roller coaster it back up for Christmas. So most years I'd lose a lot of weight, and then by Christmas I'd either be a little bit lighter or I'd be a little bit heavier. So I'd just do the standard roller coaster lifestyle, and I do some exercises. I'd get stuck at certain points, so you'd have plateau out, and you wouldn't know how to get past that. So either you give up or you just carry on doing the same thing and getting nowhere, which is frustrating. And as I say, I did this for 10 years. I read everything. I originally started with an ebook that I downloaded, and that was calorie counting. But again, it sold you an impossible dream. It sold you a 6-pack abs in 6 months. Well, with my body weight, that would be impossible. And here we are, 20 weeks later, I'm still not at that point now. And I've lost more than Deej did last year. Yeah. And I read again. So Deej went from a dad bod to Greek god, and I've still got to the dad bod stage.
So just kind of summarize that. Basically, for about 10 years, you were almost yo-yo dieting. You'd spend 6 months dieting down, and then you'd kind of like hit a point where you couldn't kind of push past any further. As you said, cake season would come in, maybe you'd go on holiday, like you'd have a break to your normal routine. And then I'd say slowly, but it sounds like quite quickly, the weight would come back on almost as quickly as kind of like you took it off. And by Christmas, you'd either be back to square one or a little bit heavier. And basically you rode that roller coaster a number of times, tried multiple different like dieting methods. Like, is there any in particular that stick in your mind that were particularly brutal for you kind of like while you were doing it?
I'd say probably the Huel one last year was quite brutal. Huel meal, that's not a fun thing to do. Even if you have four flavours isn't a great deal to choose from. It did solve some arguments about what we were having for dinner that night.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You're having a Huel, pick a flavour.
Yeah. So was that a meal replacement shake for every single meal then?
Yeah.
Okay, so a liquid diet.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine what your bathroom looked like after that. I can't.
Fair with it being quite a high fibre and quite a balanced one. It's not that bad, but certainly the change to your taste buds is the major thing, because you've not got anything that's particularly sweet or anything that's savoury, so your taste buds changed. So what we found was when you went and had, say, I was craving something savoury, not something sweet at the end of it. So I had a pie, and I could taste the fat in the pie, and it was quite disgusting.
Right.
So that pastry, I loved beforehand, and I love sausage rolls, but I don't eat them now because I don't want the pastry. So it's
sound great.
My taste buds, which has helped by changing what I'm eating now, is totally different.
So let's fast forward to kind of like where you are now. As you mentioned before, you've seen the best results that you've seen in a long period of time. Like, what do those results look like?
So I've gone from extra large t-shirts, which is this one, and you've seen me this week. I've put a medium t-shirt on for the first time in 20 years.
Wow,
still got some fat to go, but yeah, I'm lighter. I'm physically stronger than I have been probably ever. Probably not as fast on my feet, but I'm a little bit heavier than I was at my peak. So yeah, it is a lot different. I'm eating more food than I was this time last year. I'm lighter than I was this time last year, and I'm stronger than I was this time last year. And I've still got 3 months left before I get to the peak where I was last year, and I'm already below it.
Yeah. So in terms of like the enjoyment side of it, like nobody really enjoys dieting, but you have tried a lot of different ways to diet. Like, so in terms of like how, on a scale of like 1 to 10, 1 being I want to kill myself by the end of this diet, and 10 being like, it's all right. Like, where would you say like the level of enjoyment of being, even though you're in a calorie deficit, like how enjoyable has this process been?
The process for the diet on this is 9. Yeah, I'd like to go and have the 5 donuts in the packet from the shop, but I know I can't have them. So, and I won't buy one because 1's the same price as 5. And I know if I buy 5, I'll eat them. So I just don't do it. It's like changing things like I don't eat a tub of ice cream every night, but I can still go and have some ice cream. I will just measure it out.
Okay.
Rather than
it's about everything in proportion rather than saying anything is on or off limits. It's just, if I want it, I can have it. I just need to
make sure it fits.
Yeah, definitely. So that leads nicely kind of into my last question, which was if you could like summarize into say like your 3 top tips that you've learned from this process that's helped you get from where you were at the start to like where you are now, what would you say is the top 3 lessons that you've learned?
Watch your calorie intake. Don't cut it back too hard too soon. Make sure you get all your steps in, because they're probably the most important thing, because regardless of what you do in the gym, that's only about 10% of what you're going to do in a week. So getting your steps in and moving is far better. So I have to get up every morning and do some steps. Otherwise, I'd never get my 8,500 steps in, let alone 10,000. So yeah, and the third one is enjoy what you eat. As long as it fits in. If you're not enjoying it, you're just going to fail. You'll just stop doing it.
Perfect. I think that's a really, really good summary of, well, what I try to almost like preach as kind of like the main lessons. It's this process. It's a difficult process, like being in a calorie deficit for an extended period of time. As I said, it's not easy to do, but it shouldn't be torturous. You shouldn't be at a 1 on that scale by the end of it. Like if your goal is to step on stage, then maybe. However, for the average person, you can make it quite an enjoyable process. Like one thing that I forgot to ask you about was like things like diet breaks. So like, did you ever incorporate diet breaks like into the plan where we schedule those in so that you can be getting those what's it called, like social events and stuff? Is that something that you'd heard of before?
It's something I'd tried to do. But what I'd find is previously is if I chucked in a social event, I'd probably 3 or 4 days, maybe a week later, still be in the same as I was when I went out on that diet break. Right, I wouldn't be back on it the following day. Like I've said on my blog posts, there are times when you have a bad day, you eat too much, and you throw it out the window for months because there's no, so you're just throwing it all away. And because I looked at the graph last year and went, you know what, this is on exactly the same curve to put me back at Christmas at the same rate as I was in January, I could throw it all away, or I could go and get some help and go, you know what, this is going to cost me a fortune, but if I do it and I pay for it, it's going to hurt me in my pocket. I'm not Scottish, but I am tight. I don't have spare money. So I want to get my bang for my buck, and I get that. You're there to tell me if I cock up, which I don't tend to do very often. I will do Saturday.
Fair enough.
That's a social event and a night out at the theatre, so there'll be some calorie borrowing for that one.
No worries. Right, so is there anything else kind of like you wanted to say, anything else you wanted to cover before we go?
I mean, the only thing I'd say is your training is quite unique, especially what you get to me. I don't know whether that's because I've done some training for quite some time, didn't really get very far. It's not quite your normal expected program from what I'd expect from the social media stuff out there and the media in general. You don't promise somebody a 6-pack in 4 weeks, and I don't blame you because it's impossible. But you do tend to do a lot of isolation exercises, and you like to slow them down, which makes them a lot harder, which is fair enough. But rep ranges and things like that are interesting to work with. And you know how they affect you for building muscle and losing weight, and you prescribe whichever one's right for the relevant person.
No worries, dude. Right, well, thank you for all your time tonight, Roger, and thank you to anybody who did thingy in on the live, and I will stop the recording there. Right, so stop live stream.